I would guess that most of us can probably recall the first time that a prayer wasn't answered. For me, I was 12. My grandmother was hospitalized. She had had a stroke and was dying. And I remember praying and praying and praying and praying so fervently that Grandma would live. But she died. God was silent. No matter how much I prayed, nothing changed. And I offered to God to never sin again. I would be good to my sisters. I wouldn't tease them anymore. I was making pretty good deals with God, but still nothing. Probably all had experiences like that where when we were young, we prayed so fervently, and God didn't answer. Or at least not an answer that we expected. John's gospel gives us these longer stories that we've been hearing the last few weeks. And so today we get this long story. In the other Gospels, Jesus raises people from the dead, but it's just like, well, there's a guy on a stretcher, he's dead, his mom's with him, and people are crying, and just raises him. Or the girl, 12-year-old, dead in her bedroom. Jesus raises her. We don't get the whole story. Today we get the whole story. And I think John gives us the whole story because we all have experiences like Martha and Mary when we made a request of God and the prayer doesn't seem to be answered. And so John lets us know that you and I are not alone in that. What do we do when God is silent? Now we hear Martha and Mary saying to Jesus, both of them, if you would have been here, this would be a whole different outcome. And that's probably what you and I say to God too when the prayer isn't answered. If you would have been here, Jesus, it would have been different. But maybe Jesus is inviting you and I to look for his presence in other ways than simply having prayers answered. There is that dimension, and Jesus teaches us to do that. But this is shortly before Jesus' own death that we hear this story. So he invites his close friends, Martha, Mary, and their friends, into a whole nother aspect of who he is. They have come to believe, we hear from both of them. They know he's the Messiah. They know what he is capable of. But he's preparing them for the challenges that will lie ahead in a couple weeks. Inviting them into God's deeper mystery of love. And I think the church also gives us this reading because the church wants you and I to see ourselves not just as Martha and Mary, but to see ourselves as Lazarus. We are loved by Jesus as Lazarus was. And Jesus' raising of Lazarus is meant to be a promise of hope for you and for I. Fulfilling that prophecy we heard in the first reading from Ezekiel that those who are members of this family of God will rise. So in the meantime, with Martha and Mary as Lazarus? How do we walk this road with Jesus? Can we, like them, walk it on a deeper level? To see the presence of God's love in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the challenges. To know that God is there, even when it seems like God is silent. And as the great mystics will tell us over the centuries, that it is by you and I entering into the silence that we find a powerful presence of God just there. But it's when our silence is intertwined with God's silence, there we might find fire, power, divine love. I don't know if you know Blaise Pascal's story, scientist, believer. After his death, people were cleaning up his house, and they found in the jacket that he wore, sewn into the side of the jacket, a note that he had written in his own hand. It was as if he needed a constant reminder of something. And so he sewed it there in his jacket. And this is what the note said. The year of grace, 1654, Monday, 23rd of November, feast of St. Clement, Pope and Martyr, and others in the Martyrology. Vigil of Chrysogonus, Martyr, and others. From about 10:30 at night until about 10:30 midnight, and then in capital letters he writes, fire. And then he goes on. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, not of the philosophers, not of the learned. Certitude, feeling, joy, peace. God of Jesus Christ, my God and your God will be my God. Forgetfulness of the world and of everything except God. He's only found by the ways taught in the gospel. Grandeur of the human soul. Righteous Father, the world has not known you, but I have known you. Joy, joy, joy. Tears of joy. Little reminder sewn into his jacket. So he'd never forget that encounter, typical of a scientist. It was this day, it was at this time, took this long for it to happen. But otherwise, he could not explain it. Certitude, joy, love. When God is silent, God is not absent. God is there. Maybe unexplainable, but powerfully there. And he invites you into that silence, there to experience fire.